I'm going to correct a mistake that I made in the last video that I posted about the UK general election. I like to be as accurate as I can be and very detailed, but something was brought to my attention that clearly very few of you knew about, because only 2 people out of lots of people commenting actually mentioned this particular change. Now, this particular change, I never knew about it, so I'm assuming that lots of other people also didn't know about it. And so I will get onto what that change is shortly. But my main argument does remain exactly the same in relation to the results, which have now been finalised, so I'll get into those a bit later. If you don't know who I am, I'm Aaron Henriquez. I'm a multi-business owner. I used to be a police officer in London for 10 years before moving to entrepreneurship and get up to all sorts of other things with investing and whatever. So let me get back to this video. Firstly, I'm going to correct a few people because I've had some crazy accusations thrown at me and I don't know where they got it from, because it's not things that were actually said in the video. People have just assumed certain things. A lot of people seem to have thought that I voted for reform, and a lot of other people have called me a Ramona. Well, not a lot, actually, just a few people have called me a Ramona, basically saying that I was moaning about the Leave vote from the 2011 referendums. And there's been a lot of people, and I don't know why, but there's been a number of people saying that in 2011, we were given the opportunity to change the type of voting system that we currently have in the United Kingdom. Now, to those people, I just say every single thing you've just said is completely wrong. Firstly, on the 2011 referendum, that was to leave or remain in the EU. That has nothing to do with what our voting system is. We didn't get to vote on our voting system. To my knowledge, that has never happened in my lifetime. Now, from the research that I've done, and it may be incorrect, possibly by a number of years, maybe even a couple of decades, but whatever, this current voting system in the UK came about in the early 1800s. Around 1930-ish is when it came about. People were still going around in horse and carts. Even the steam train wasn't widely adopted across the country by then. So, it is a really old, archaic system. Now, on the point of who I voted for, listen, I didn't vote for reform. They were my second choice, to be honest, but I didn't vote for them. I voted for who I've always voted for, which are the Conservatives. Now, some people think I'm the Antichrist because of it. Like I'm the devil, reincarnated because I voted Conservatives. Whatever, I don't care. But I didn't vote for reform. The fact I'm sticking up for them in the previous video doesn't mean I had to have voted for them. And this is something that people need to start getting a grip of themselves and realizing that actually sometimes things are not right. And just because it is, in the opposition's favor that something isn't right, it doesn't mean it shouldn't be spoken about. And on the referendum, I'm not a Ramona. I voted Leave. I was a very firm Leave then, and if we had the referendum again today, despite all the people telling me that I'm stupid and whatever for having the view, I would still vote Leave again. So anyway, let's get back onto the mistake that I made in the previous video. What I wasn't aware of is that there was a review done on the constituency boundaries in 2023. Now, from what I can work out, all constituencies today, so from the voting system that we had in 2024, but not previously, all of the constituencies should be around within plus or minus 5% of about 73,000. So the number that I've seen is that under the Parliamentary Constituencies Act 2020, it requires that most seats have between 69,724 voters and 77,062 voters. And that's registered voters, it's not necessarily the people that actually vote. It looks like there are a number of islands which have been given special privilege just because of the special nature of the fact that they're so enclosed and they are an island nation, where they may have far fewer registered voters, but it is a rare exception and shouldn't actually have a massive impact on the end result. And I wasn't aware of that change. So for those of you who listened to the last video and took that as gospel, I apologize, because it wasn't correct. I wasn't actually aware of this change in 2023. Now I'm aware of it. If you're still watching this, now you're aware of it. So does it make a massive change to the examples I gave in the previous video? The answer is no. The Isle of Wight, instead of having One MP actually now has two MPs. They've got an Isle of Wight East and West. The small island that I mentioned hasn't changed, and Islington also hasn't changed very much. Islington North, it's still its own constituency with about the same number of voters. Actually, the examples I gave are not that different, but it is an important point for people to realise that the government did try to level out the boundary issues in terms of one place having way more voters than the next for just one seat. Now, let me just be really, really clear before I move on to this next part, that I did not vote for reform, okay? I didn't vote for them. However, the votes that came through are still not reflective on a national level of what the public have voted for. Yes, under our archaic system, it is as it is. And I'm not disputing this result that Labour should have got in. I'm not disputing that at all. It's not about Labour, it's not about Conservatives, it's not about the Lib Dems. Okay, Labour got in both on the majority of actual votes and also the number of constituencies. So on both parts, Labour would have got in anyway. Now, only 60% of the UK voting population actually voted this year. A humongous number of the country didn't vote. Now, there can be all sorts of reasons behind that, but the MPs can't represent people who haven't voted or expressed their wishes. So I'm only talking about those people who have actually voted. And the biggest discrepancy that stood out to me was the discrepancy between the Liberal Democrats' result and Reform UK's result. Now, the Lib Dems received 3,519,199 votes. This is now all seats counted. That was 12.2% of the total vote, and they received 72 seats. Okay, fine. Reform UK received 4,117,221 votes. That's 14.3%, and they received 5 seats in the House of Commons. So they've got 5 MPs representing those 4,117,221 people. The issue that I take with that, and for those of you that maybe weren't listening to the numbers so well, Reform received 598,022 more votes than the Liberal Democrats, but they have 67 fewer MPs representing the public who voted for them in the House of Commons for this Parliament. So that's 67 fewer votes effectively that Reform get to have on issues of national interest which happen in our government. Now, I did not vote for Reform, as I've said multiple times. I'm sure someone's still going to accuse me of it. But whatever, I do care that the wishes of the voting public have not been heard. These elections were national elections. When you look at a referendum, it's done on a number of votes. It's not done on a number of constituencies or anything like that. It's done on the wishes of the people. Now, I do not understand why you wouldn't have a very similar system in terms of when you're dealing with national issues at our central government level. The people who are making the decisions and voting on things that affect everyone on a national level should be representative, in my opinion, and it is only in my opinion. It should be representative and everyone's vote should actually be equal. But under this system, the votes are clearly not equal. Clearly, people have tried to argue the fact they are just because whatever, their party's got in and so they're happy with the result. That is, for me, that's not rational. It's definitely not fair on them, and I didn't vote for them, okay? But I am thinking that everyone should have their voices heard equally when it comes to a national election. If this was done based on the weighting of actual votes, Reform would have 91 seats in the House of Parliament. They would have 91 MPs representing them in the Houses of Parliament today, but instead they only have 5. If they had 91, they would pose a real challenge to the sitting government, and the sitting government would have to listen to the wishes of those smaller parties like Reform, and then Lib Dems would be a smaller party than even Reform would be. They would have to listen to those wishes of those other parties. Instead, what we currently have under this system is we have a government which has a supermajority. They never ever have to listen to what the other parties are saying, even if all the other parties combined completely disagree with something that the current government, which is Labour, tries to pass through. As long as Sir Keir Starmer or whoever ends up being in charge later down the line you know, because we've got a thing of churn of prime ministers in this country for some reason. But whoever ends up being in charge, as long as they can convince their Labour to be on side, they can push anything through, regardless of who challenges it or what they have to say. They can push anything through because they've got this supermajority or whatever. Now, I'm not disputing, like I said, Labour did win both on the number of votes and also the constituencies, which is actually done under. So either way, Labour would be in power, so Keir Starmer would be the Prime Minister, and it is deserved. The Tories fucked up for the last 14 years. I've been a Tory voter, and I can say that, okay? I'm not that passionate about the Tories particularly, and I feel like people should stop being so overly passionate about their party and just defending their party regardless of how incompetent they may be, just defending them. You need to hold your MPs to account. They are there to represent you and the rest of the people across the country and across your constituency. Now, my main point just remains that discrepancy, it isn't right, it isn't fair, and it is something that needs to be changed. It cannot be that one person's vote is worth several times more than the other. How on earth can you have a party that has received nearly 600,000 more votes than the other one, but receives 67 fewer seats? I'm sorry, if you're of any form of level-head, rational person, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make any sense, and that is what my main argument was in that last video. It doesn't make sense, it isn't right, and it does need to change. And I had someone say that the MPs voted on this quite recently. I don't know actually if they did. I couldn't be bothered to even research it if they did vote or not. And do you know why? Because I don't give a shit. Do you really think you don't have to have half a brain cell to think about this and know that if you gave Labour and Conservatives and Lib Dems the vote to be able to say, would you like to change this current system where you do very well every time? Or would you like to make it based more equally on the actual weighting from the number of votes? Why on earth would a party like Labour, who have 400 and something seats, say, actually, do you know what? I don't want that annoying party called Reform under Nigel Farage to have just 5 seats because that's not fair. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to let them have 91 and like hold up all the plans that we plan on doing and cause a real problem in the House of Parliament. Do you really think that they're going to turn around and be like, yes, let's make that change? Of course they're not going to. Something like that is only ever going to come in with a referendum, a national referendum, where the people are actually voting and it is counted then on actual numbers of people voting. The MPs are never going to vote for that. The three main parties, none of them are going to vote for that. The Lib Dems would have far fewer seats than they currently do today if they voted for such a system. This is a dumb comment to make. I think the terminology used in government anyway is not, it just doesn't make sense. It is ridiculous. The fact they even call themselves the opposition is wrong in my view, because none of them should be the opposition. None of them should be opposing each other. They should all have one aim, and that is to make the United Kingdom the best it can be and flourish. Their duty is to you, to us, the public in the UK, and nothing else. So this interfighting that happens, it's no longer just going on in the Houses of Parliament where these idiots just shout at each other, but it is also going on now massively among people who have, someone who votes Labour hates someone who votes Conservative. I'm not saying everyone, but there are a very high number of people who literally, they'll hear your vote Tory and they'll think you're a piece of shit. Like you're an absolute piece of shit that deserves to die. Genuinely, that's like how some people behave. And they behave like, well, you've got a different view to me, so therefore you are completely dumb, you're stupid as fuck, you don't deserve to breathe, you don't deserve to vote, fucking go and die. That's what people come across like. And it needs to change, because we're arguing between ourselves when really there's 650 people in the House of Parliament who are the only ones who should be getting shit from the public about things being the way that they are. I don't really know what else to say about that, but that's just my opinion. Other people have other opinions on it. Hopefully, I've corrected myself correctly this time. If I haven't, please leave another comment. I'm probably not going to do another video about this again, or certainly not anytime soon, because it's not something I normally talk about. I'm more interested in business and investing and business strategies or whatever. Like, I'm not that interested in talking about politics, because I think people are too divided and we need to start coming together. Anyway, I'm Aaron Henriquez. Bye.